So for you, where do you feel your kind of individual spirituality and the presence of God have kind of connected?
Yeah, it's yeah, I can relate so much to what you've just shared. And you know what I think is interesting is that so for me, what something that I notice is so it's so comfortable for me to talk about God. I was raised talking about God.
Mm-hmm.
And when people have perceptions, right? Or like preconceived notions, and there's like they're there for a reason. They make sense, right? You think of like Catholicism and you can kind of picture like how someone was brought up. And like you referenced your dad growing up in a strict Catholic family.
Mm-hmm.
That was not my experience in any way. We were almost kind of like I remember the churches that we would go to. It was like we weren't going to the same church that everybody else was. Like we went to a church in a barn sometimes, and we went to like this like beautiful like mansion. And I remember feeling like, are we a bunch of gypsies? Like what are we doing? We're not doing it like everybody else. And when you're little, you kind of want to just do what everybody else is doing, but you go along for the ride, whatever ride your parents take you on. And so interestingly for me is that I was raised to have this really strong faith and belief in God. And like I said, it was rooted in Catholicism, and my extended family, outside of my immediate home, everybody was connected to the church. So I grew up going to First Communions
Mm-hmm.
and all of that stuff. But in my home, my dad was my CCD teacher. He probably was a little more traditional when it came to faith. And my mom, she would say things to me that would frustrate me, honestly. Like I would go to my mom. You go to your mom to be like, I'm having this problem at school, or you're in tears about something. And she would say things to me like, you've got to hand it over to God. And I'd be like, what the fuck? Like sometimes can you give me a hug, or, she hugged me, but like,
Yes.
can you give me an answer or something? But like, now I look back, I'm like, wow, like what a powerful thing to start to say to somebody and start to just to bring me up that way, to teach me that there's so much strength in surrendering and into believing that there's this higher power. So anyway, another reason that I'm so comfortable talking about God is because I grew up going in the halls of AA. I would go to AA with my mother all the time, so I was afraid to stay home alone. And in AA, they talk about God all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And not everybody that's there is Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was raised to see God as depicted in the Bible, I also was raised with this different perspective. So there was nothing strict and conventional about it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that was interesting to me. And then when I abandoned it and went off to kind of search on my own, that was like my experience. Everything had been, what I was taught and what was given to me. But I still had like this strong foundation, this
Mm-hmm.
root, this understanding, this place to go back to if I needed to. It's like
Right.
I always knew I could, So even in that time where I kind of deviated and maybe my belief wasn't as strong,
Yes.
I knew it was there. That is a gift that my parents and my grandmother gave to me by raising me in that way. That was always like an invitation to rely on and to talk about God. So to kind of answer your question now, I've come back and I just feel really comfortable and centered where I'm at, with just this greater collection of experiences and beliefs and studies behind me that I just feel really connected to this higher power that doesn't maybe look like anybody else's,